All right, Parliament is back in session for 2026, and wow, the gloves are already off. The opposition didn't just wander back to their seats, they showed up with a full-blown battle plan. So let's break down their very first week and see exactly where the political fault lines are starting to crack open.
So check this out. The week actually kicked off on January 6th, but not in the main parliamentary chamber. Nope, this was all happening behind closed doors where opposition leaders got together to map out a unified strategy. This wasn't about sitting back and reacting to the government. This was about them setting the agenda, deciding exactly where they were going to apply pressure right from the get-go.
So you're probably asking, what exactly was on that agenda? Well, they zeroed in on the issues that are hitting people the hardest right now. You know, everything from the recovery after recent disasters to the rising cost of just about everything.
4 key battlegrounds emerged from that meeting. First up, the seriously bungled response to Cyclone 𝗦𝗦𝗕𝗏. Second, some really controversial education reforms that have a lot of parents and teachers worried. Third, and this is one we're all feeling, a planned electricity tariff hike that's going to hit every single household budget. And finally, the ongoing crises in the health sector. And you got to understand, these weren't random issues. Oh no. These were carefully chosen to hit the government where it's most vulnerable.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just about these policy debates. The opposition went straight for the jugular, challenging the very way the government operates. And folks, that is where the real fireworks began.
First on their hit list was a huge, glaring hole in the system. The Auditor General's chair has been sitting empty for over a month. Now, if you're not familiar, think of the Auditor General as the country's top financial watchdog, the one person with the official power to follow the money and make sure taxpayer funds aren't being wasted. And right now, that office is just dark.
And the fallout from this vacancy isn't some far-off problem. It's happening right now. As MP 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗜𝗕 pointed out, without an Auditor General, those super important watchdog committees, COPE and 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗏, they're basically paralyzed. These are the committees responsible for grilling officials on public spending. And without their lead investigator, well, parliamentary oversight pretty much grinds to a halt.
Next up, the fight moved over to the extension of the emergency law. The opposition's argument was pretty straightforward. They were asking, hold on a second, why are we using these heavy-duty anti-terror laws, the kind designed for something like the Easter attacks, to manage the aftermath of a cyclone? They argued it was completely the wrong tool for the job, and for a very specific reason.
MP 𝗦𝗫𝗻 really boiled it all down to one sharp question. He pointed out that the extended law could be used to restrict freedom of expression. For the opposition, that was a massive red flag. They're arguing this has nothing to do with disaster relief and everything to do with a backdoor attempt to silence any potential public protest.
And the clashes just kept on coming. This time, they targeted a fundamental pillar of democracy, the judiciary. The opposition started asking a very, let's say, sensitive question. How exactly are judges being chosen and promoted in Sri Lanka?
To get some answers, the opposition proposed setting up a special parliamentary committee to investigate the whole process. But the speaker shut it down, flat out, said it was an unconstitutional breach of the separation of powers and would threaten the judiciary's independence. I mean, the rejection was so severe that some MPs were calling it one of the darkest days in parliamentary history. That tells you just how deep this rift is.
Okay, so from the halls of justice, the battlefront shifted again, this time to the economy. And here the opposition just opened fire on, well, pretty much everything, from the cost of electricity to secretive international trade deals.
Then came a number that I'm sure you'll feel, a proposed 11.57% hike in electricity prices. The opposition leader was on it immediately, basically asking, wait a minute, you promised bills would go down, so why are they going up?
And the economic pressure didn't stop at electricity. Not by a long shot. MPs brought up alleged massive corruption in a coal tender, saying it cost the country 10 times billion rupees. They pushed the government to go back and renegotiate those painful IMF loan conditions. They highlighted unfair tax policies in the port city that hurt local investors. And they demanded some answers on what exactly is being promised in trade deals with the US. So after tackling these big-picture economic issues, the debate drilled right down to the public services that people rely on every single day. And one area in particular came under intense fire: education.
Yeah, a huge controversy over new education reforms just erupted this week. It started simply enough. New curriculum modules were sent to schools. But then parents and teachers found that the grade 6 English module had what they're calling problematic content, including, get this, bizarre links to private websites.
This triggered a total firestorm in Parliament. Who reviewed this stuff? Were teachers even trained on it? And the big question, was this some kind of backdoor attempt to misuse state funds? Other public services were also put under the microscope. There were calls for way better quality testing of imported medicines after all the recent scandals. MPs demanded financial help for the small businesses that were wiped out by Cyclone 𝗦𝗦𝗕𝗏, and they highlighted everything from fraud at the motor traffic department to dangerously overcrowded trains on key routes.
So you see how all of this is building, right? All of these debates on governance, the economy, and especially education, they were all leading somewhere. They were building towards a major political move, the real climax of the opposition's first week back.
After days of just hammering the government on its failures, especially when it came to education, the opposition decided that, you know what, words just weren't enough anymore. It was time for action. And that brings us right back to that strategy meeting on January 6th. This is where they made their ultimate decision. They would prepare a no-confidence motion against the Minister of Education. This escalates things from a week of policy debates into a direct challenge to the government's leadership. You know, amidst all the political fireworks, the opposition also took a moment to launch something a little different, a new inclusion project. The whole idea is to make all of their communications more accessible for people with disabilities. It's a small, but honestly, a pretty important step towards more inclusive politics.
So, there you have it. The first week of Parliament has set a deeply confrontational tone for the year. With the battle lines drawn so sharply on these fundamental issues, the question really isn't if there will be conflict anymore, it's how intense it's going to get. Is this the new normal for Sri Lankan politics? I guess we'll all just have to keep watching to find out.